Two former New York head coaches can link up down in Tennessee on the Titans staff. Robert Saleh is now the new head coach down with the Titans, but could Brian Daboll join him as his OC? Now, it's not confirmed yet, but Daboll could head to Nashville if he doesn't get the Raiders head coaching job. Our Giants beat writer for the Post, Paul Schwartz, is on to talk about Daboll's options. Paul, thanks for hopping on with this. When this news was reported or broke, or I guess safe to say reported, someone texted me and asked me if Daboll was fired midway through the season by the Giants, why is he still an attractive coaching candidate for the Titans and the Raiders? How do I respond to that text, Paul?
Well, a lot of head coaches get fired one place and then get hired somewhere else, right? John Harbaugh was just fired, right, by the Ravens. And, I'm sure in Baltimore they had enough of John Harbaugh, and the Giants could not wait to re-sign him, right? Kevin Stefanski was fired by the Browns, and now he's the head coach for the Falcons. So Brian Daboll, yes, was fired, didn't make it through his fourth season with the Giants, but one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? Bad situation, sometimes a bad quarterback, bad ownership, sometimes bad front office, all can lead to a guy not succeeding one place and succeeding at the other. I had no doubt that Brian Daboll would be an offensive coordinator in the NFL in 2026. I mean, virtually no doubt. That I think he'd be a head coach? Probably not. There's still a chance with the Raiders. He's one of the three finalists to go to the Raiders. We'll see what happens there. Maybe the Raiders want to wait till after the playoffs are over. We'll see. But I had no doubt. I mean, Brian Daboll is a fine offensive coordinator. The Giants' offense was better this year with him not calling the plays. We have to say that. Mike Kafka called the plays. Jackson Dart playing quarterback as a rookie had something to do with that also for the offensive uptick. But if anybody would call me and ask me from another team, what do you think of Brian Daboll as an offensive coordinator? I would say, who's your quarterback? Tell me about your roster and your personnel a little bit. But, I think Brian Daboll can run an NFL offense. I certainly do.
These are two coaches that are what I like to call rah-rah guys, high-energy guys. So what do you think this relationship or this working relationship could potentially look like with these two on staff?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is, because these are guys who are contemporaries, right? They both became head coaches around the same time, both in New York, Saleh for the Jets, Daboll for the Giants. When the Giants and Jets practiced together, those joint practices, and we'd always ask Brian Daboll, so how did this come about? And he says, well, Robert Saleh and I have always had a good relationship. And Brandon, sometimes you hear that and you're like, sometimes it's true, sometimes it's like sort of true. Yeah. It's just we're going to practice together and we get along okay. But these guys definitely have a good relationship, you can tell. And it's interesting that Saleh got his second chance, after a failed first chance with the Jets. Don't forget, Brian Daboll was a NFL Coach of the Year in 2022 and took his team to the playoffs. Robert Saleh did not come close to achieving either of those two, and he now gets a second chance. People liked what he did with the San Francisco defense, right? That's why the Jets hired him in the first place. And you know what? Guys are allowed to grow and evolve and mature also. I mean, I think too often in the NFL industry, they hire first-timers and then they sit back like this and say, okay, first-timer, show us what you got. Make mistakes, but don't make a lot of them or else we're going to can you. And they don't let guys make mistakes and learn from their mistakes. They get rid of them quickly. That's what happened with the Jets. Too quickly? I don't know. Maybe not. Did it happen too quickly with the Giants? I don't know. Maybe not. But they both get second chances, and it will be interesting because they are both alphas, as you said, and they are both guys who are, it's not like one guy is here and one guy is here. They're both kind of on the same plane, but when one guy's the head coach and one guy's the offensive coordinator, one guy is the boss and one guy is not.
Yeah, and I read somewhere that Robert Saleh might be making the calls on defense this time around instead of having a defense coordinator like a Jeff Ulbrich. So Saleh could be running his defense. Brian Daboll, if he doesn't get that Raiders job and does accept the OC job, he'd be calling the offense. When you look at, again, you just talked about how they're both alphas. Both of these guys, I respect their X's and O's tremendously. One's more of a leader of men than the other. I feel like Saleh is kind of, he did a lot better with the Jets players and all than Brian Daboll did. So do you think this coaching combo could turn the Titans franchise around?
Who I think can turn the Titans franchise around more than anything is Cam Ward. It's about players, and Brian Daboll liked Cam Ward a lot coming out of the draft, right? The Giants wanted to trade up to get him. I was the only New York reporter in Miami for Cam Ward's pro day, and the Giants' full contingent was there. Joe Shane, Daboll, as I said, loved the guy. They were like, let's trade up to get him. They just couldn't do it. The Titans were not going to trade. They earned that #1 pick by being lousy, and they wanted to take Cam Ward. And, there was no other quarterback in that draft that was deemed worthy of a top 5 pick, which is why the Giants sat at #3 and took Abdul Carter. And then, Joe Shane and, orchestrated that terrific deal to trade up back into the first round to number 25, a deal with the Houston Texans to get Jackson Dart. And that probably saved Shane's job and, has Giants fans thinking that we have a future. So Brian Daboll, I'm sure, look, I don't know what kind of options he had as an offensive coordinator, but he realizes he's really good, but he's not a miracle worker. And you can't go into a situation where there's no quarterback and no potential to draft a quarterback and say, I'm going to get it done on offense. So Daboll and Cam Ward, I think Cam Ward will really, really benefit from this. And look, the Titans roster is maybe the worst in the league. They're a really, really weak roster, but they have a young quarterback. Jackson Dart had a better rookie year than Cam Ward did, but Cam Ward was considered, coming out of the draft last year, the better prospect by virtually everybody, and maybe everybody, including the Giants. They had Ward as a better prospect than Jackson Dart. They couldn't get Ward. They pivoted and traded up to get Dart. So I think Brian Daboll will be very anxious and eager to work with that young quarterback.
Yeah, Cam Ward, when I was doing the evaluation of him coming out of Miami, he was unreal. Like, and even you could see him come around late in the season as well, playing like the Cam Ward at Miami, Washington State, everywhere that he's been. You talk about the success that Brian Daboll had with Jackson Dart. So let's say, okay, again, hypothetical, he doesn't get the Raiders job. He takes over as OC in Tennessee. X's and O's aspect of it. How do you see Daboll calling plays or game planning? More like he has a Josh Allen as quarterback, or more of a Jackson Dart as quarterback?
Well, I think Dart and Josh Allen are similar. Josh Allen is just a bigger, stronger, faster version of Jackson Dart. Cam Ward can move, but he's not the kind of runner that Jackson Dart is or Josh Allen is. So Daboll will have to make some adjustments there. Look, it's going to be a personal connection. It's going to be the main thing. Daboll and Dart had this personal connection. You could just tell they like busting on each other. Daboll loved, playing little mind games and mind tricks with Jackson Dart. Now, will Cam Ward take that coaching as well as Jackson Dart did? That remains to be seen. But throughout the whole draft process, Daboll, was in on all the interviews with Cam Ward, pro days, combine, so he got a lot of exposure to Cam Ward, and they came away saying, yes, let's try to trade up to get him, even though they could not do that. So I would think Daboll has an understanding of what Cam Ward is. Cam Ward is not the kind of personality that Jackson Dart is from my time around both. Certainly more time now around Jackson Dart. Cam Ward is very serious. He's intense. Some people along his journey, don't forget he didn't start at Miami, though he wasn't always the most popular teammate because he was very intense, very demanding, not that free spirit. He took his losing hard, took his own performance hard. So, Daboll will have to adjust to that and adjust to that personality. And Cam Ward will have to adjust to Brian Daboll's personality. But Brian Daboll knows how to work with young quarterbacks. So like I said, I think Cam Ward, if he's open to it, will really benefit from this.
Here's another hypothetical. If you're Brian Daboll, which quarterback would you rather coach in 2026? Fernando Mendoza or Cam Ward?
Well, that's easy. If he's going to coach Fernando Mendoza, he's going to be the head coach.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? He's going to be the head coach. And last time I checked, offensive coordinators pretty much always want to be head coaches. So, I think Joe Brady was a finalist there. He was just hired by the Bills. Who else is there? Davis Webb. That would be something, right? Davis Webb is a finalist for the Raiders. Evario, right? Ejiro Evario.
Ejiro Evario. Yep. Ejiro Evario.
Yes. Defensive coordinator, right?
From
the Panthers. He's a guy who has been a finalist there. All three of those guys have interviewed twice. So do the Raiders just want to make a call there? Do they want to wait for a Kubiak after the Super Bowl? Do they want to wait? Maybe they get in on Shula now. Is there anyone from the Patriots? Probably not. I mean, do they want to make a run at Josh McDaniels? I have no idea. It's the Raiders. You really don't know what the Raiders are going to do.
Been there, done that.
Yes. So, yeah, that's true. I don't think they'll bring Josh McDaniels back. Yeah, but that would be a hell of a story, and it would only be the Raiders to do that. We didn't like him then, but now we like him now, right? So, would Brian Daboll take the head coaching job with the Raiders? I think because of Mendoza, that makes it very attractive. You are starting from the ground floor with the Raiders. Now, that's a situation where you have a quarterback. They're going to take him number one, you would think, everyone thinks, and then you start. The expectations are low. You're not going to have a really good team, but you think you can build around a number one pick franchise quarterback. We'll see how that transpires. So that will be fascinating. Is Brian Daboll kind of a hard sell in Sin City on the Strip in Vegas? Yes and no. Yes, you can say, well, he didn't do anything in his last 3 years with the Giants. You can say he's good with quarterbacks. You can say he's a guy who will build our program. Maybe they're waiting for someone else. I think, Brandon, I'll leave you with this, is that people who try to make a living predicting this and then trying to predict what the Raiders are going to do are going to lose a lot of money, because the Raiders very often do what you don't expect them to do.
Well, you could rub his bald head for good luck, then go play blackjack. Hopefully, win some money there. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And but it's great for Daboll that he's going to get opportunity elsewhere. Like you said, without a doubt, I thought he was going to be an offensive coordinator somewhere in 2026. But let's see if he gets a head coaching job sooner than later. Paul, thanks for taking the time out and hopping on with us.
Yep, thank you.